Tell us about your campaign in Israel.
Well, as a musician, I'm convinced that Wagner should be played in Israel. Why? Wagner is the grandfather of all contemporary music. Wagner is the father of Richard Strauss, Bruckner, Mahler, and the whole Schoenberg school. Now what we are doing in Israel, now I'm only speaking as a musician first. What we're doing in Israel is we are playing the music of all his children and grandchildren. We are eating the fruit of the tree without seeing the main stem. So therefore in 1981, with the complete blessing of the orchestra, we decided to play the Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan and Isolde after the concert. Because even then, I think I was sensitive enough to realize that we cannot force anyone to listen to this music. So we played the concert, and then I said to the public that, look, we're living in a democracy, the only democracy in those days in the Middle East. We can say what we want, we read what we want, but we can also play and listen to what we want. So therefore, I'm now going to play, with the blessing of the orchestra, this excerpt from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, and whoever really would like to leave, we have no problem with it. We invite you to leave, and those who want to stay are welcome. Not one person got up to leave. And I started the prelude, which, as you know, is very quiet, very introverted, it's very soulful. Suddenly, in the third or fourth bar, one person got up and shouted, "You will not play Wagner." Well, you can't say a thing like this probably in any public without somebody replying, but especially not in Israel. Israelis love debate. So not only did the public answer him, but even the concertmaster answered him back. Well, there started the brouhaha. And I must say, the supporters were shouting more than the detractors. But I didn't stop. And soon the great crescendo emanated from the orchestra a few minutes later. Then everything died down, and we played it right through till the end of the Liebestod. It was a triumph at the end. But it was a hollow triumph, because the next day they came armed. Almost, they came into the concert after the performance was over, after the main symphony was over, and when I announced that I'm going to play it again, they sort of shouted me down. So I stopped playing. There started the great debate, of course. And it was an education for me too, because as missionary as I felt, musically speaking, I thought I was insensitive to those people still living in Israel who have tattooed numbers on their arms, who have nothing against the music of Wagner, who have not even anything against Wagner himself, but the fact that they had to hear Wagner during their youth. They associated Wagner with a certain tyranny that they escaped from, and the music, of course, transported them back to that era. And we have to be sensitive to those people, and we have to wait till those people ultimately attain their sainthood, which they very rightly deserve. And so we are going to wait. In the meantime, in Israel, there was such a re-education of Wagner. Universities started courses on Wagner. The state radio plays it non-stop. I mean, you can hear Wagner almost every day on state-run Israeli radio. So there's no government policy against it. There's not even an orchestral decision not to play it. We're just not playing it. Daniel Barenboim once announced a concert of only Wagner's music, I don't know, about a decade later, and that concert never took place because there were so many objections. So he had sort of public rehearsals of the music. So that's as far as we've gone. Lenny Bernstein always told me, don't stop, keep on playing. I said, then why don't you do it also? You know, You're the great Jewish conductor. You should do it. But it never happened.
As far as I know, the original boycott began with Huberman.
Well, in those days, it really didn't make sense. In those days, Strauss was also sort of automatically banned because for 2 years he was a member, not of the party, but he was the head of the Reichsmusikkammer, from which he was fired. And he had nothing to do with them anymore. And the operas that he wrote in the Nazi times had not one Germanic subject. They were all mythological ideas, or things like Capriccio that took place in the 18th century, etc. We now do play Richard Strauss without any problems, and we will one day play Wagner, possibly in the near future, but at the moment, if there was one person with a number on his arm, I don't want to insult him or her.
You've said, and very eloquently, why, for social reasons, you have to put a brake on it. But there are people who feel two things. One is that Hitler didn't simply use Wagner's music, but that he was actually profoundly influenced by Wagner's anti-Semitic pamphlet, the Das Judentum und der Musik, and by Wagner's political thinking.
Yes. There's no question that Wagner was a confirmed anti-Semite. But I can make you a whole list of other anti-Semitic composers whose music we play, we cannot run away from. And it is true that the Nazis did use Wagner, to signal victories. The Ride of the Valkyries was played every time there was a victory somewhere. But so was Liszt's Lay Prelude. Bruckner's Seventh was played on all state funeral occasions, etc. But no doubt Wagner was differently handled by the Nazis to their own supposed advantage. And this is what takes these certain people back to the days they want to forget. And one has to understand that and sympathize.